So this week we're talking about value, and this is this is one of the I think most interesting concepts because we have a couple of things to show that are just interesting to me. And one of the first ones is this uh, I don't know, we'll call it graph here. So if we look at this, and I'll make this larger, the gray dot is the same has the same value in every square. So just the background value is changing. And so the value doesn't have anything to do with anything other than it's basically lighter or darker. And we could say white and black, but it's really more than that. It's just how light and dark the shades of paintings are. So, and it's interesting as a designer if we start to look at the dark areas, because the dark areas, a lot, or the difference between the light and the dark areas. But if we can identify those and get the shading correct, then we can create depth with just the value. You notice these are just black and white, so it's just, and, and we're using black and white here uh, as I think an over exaggeration of what value is. And so there's a lot of white and black in this chapter, but really we're talking about value. So here's one of the map of the United States and populations where the slavery is, and you can see the darkest parts are where what we I would like to get in closer there because I can't tell because I didn't think there was slavery in the north. Yeah, this looks more like a population center. It doesn't look accurate to me. This is interesting because this has just got numbers. I don't know where the numbers start, but there. If we get, let's see if we can get a little closer there. They all look like versions of a million. Just interesting. But just some of them are lighter, some of them are darker, create the patterns. This is pretty morbid, this picture here, but, and also it's completely gotten rid of the background. And then once again, and here again, we are taking the color out of this painting and just showing the different values and what those values are doing to create or help us understand the picture. And then here again, we see, and this one really doesn't change this picture very much because of the difference in the values. But this one, some of that, we should pull up one of the colored versions. This is where value really starts to stand out, is in this particular painting, and they've made the contrast here. So look in this area, this looks about the same. It doesn't look like there's much difference between this side and this side. But then look here. And so it's interesting to flash back between these two to see where see things like we almost don't notice what's going on over here until we see the color, but the value is about the same as these other things. And the interesting thing is here is the difference between the pink and the green up here, or the blue. It would just seem like this is brighter. So it's so crazy to see where we've turned this to black and white, and we really lose all of what's going on in this painting because the color's gone. But the value, it really, this is where it stuck with me about value, is you can see the value of each one of those is so much different between these two, or so much the same when the value of the blue, the green, and the pink. It's just interesting to see. So I think this does a better job of explaining value than even that first little graph at the beginning of the chapter. What's funny is as we start through this, then we want to see the black and white version, but they don't have, those are the only, that's the only one that they do with in this chapter. But we can just see what the artist is doing with the value, just making more value here in this and just making the contrast. I think this is cool, this etching. Well, I should say etching here, but they did the etching and then they inked it up and then they pushed it on the paper, then they pressed it on paper. This is an interesting contrast too here with this branch. What is this called? Sycamore stick. But this is, I think, and at first you're looking at this and you're like, what's the significance of this? But you these two have to go together. So now this may have been the same stick, but this is definitely at a different time. So this is right after the sycamore stick fell on the ground. And then this is the sycamore stick after it's dried out and put in basically the same place that this stick was at a different time of the year. So the fact that the artist, Andy Goldsworthy, figured did this, this is amazing because this is a piece of art that took at least 6 months, or I don't know, maybe less time, but still, it's interesting that he came up with this concept, took the picture at one time of the year, and then took another one at a different time of the year. Does it say? Yeah, it just says January 1981. So another good example of how value changes the perception of the design. So here is where we're using value to create the illusion of space. So here it looks like we've got a light source, and then we've got shadows, and then these different, that's just creating depth. And this has color to it, but once again, we're showing depth by those things that are closer up are obviously closer to us. The light source is far away and behind these objects. What's this called? Just interesting here how they've got the differences in value to show the light and also the fire. Funny. Graphite on paper. Which means he did this with the pencil. Just interesting to see the difference in the value. So we have an assignment that goes along with this, and I should talk about that. Let me find that assignment. When is that assignment due? So this is due. So we have this a value worksheet, and some people understand this. So here's some a couple of examples. There is, let me grab the. So we've got this worksheet here, and we go from light to dark. We've got some examples here of different patterns that show, okay, here's lighter, here's darker. And then we'll see who actually watches this. Because this is, so for this assignment, we've got, I'm going to have to, I'm going to go back to the calendar. So we've got a major creative project. This line is value. So what you're supposed to do is use this sheet to come up with your own light to value with all these different in all these different squares, similar to what the students have done here. And so you see how it's lighter on this side, darker on this side, all of these patterns. But then what we want you to do is take those things that those squares that you've used and use those to do for this imagery, for this horse. So you're going to block this out, just like they've done. Well, this one isn't quite as blocked out, but you need to block this similar to this, and then use the value that you created in your worksheet and put that into the painting, or put this into this, or translate this photograph into something that's recognizable based on the value that was created in this exercise this week. So last semester, students, I would say about 60-70% of the students got that concept last semester, but I've seen semesters where only one student out of the whole class understood this, and so I need to be better at explaining this. So as we're talking about value, these are the projects that we're going to be using this concept, except we are using, this is line as value in here in these examples. So hopefully that is helpful. So that is it for this week. Dayton, thank you for joining, and I will post this. I appreciate you joining.